Hello, this is Silver Pride 2021. I'm Gareth McLean, and now I'm joined with David Platts for David Platts Art History. Hello, David.
Hello, Gareth. Nice to meet you
again. On our serious voices for this part. We're here to discuss your illustrious career.
Oh,
we might actually dip into some of your books behind you as well.
Do. If I get boring, you always have to.
Yeah, we're like, could you just read the story from one of the I don't think there's any danger you'll get boring. David is just an amazing artist who is very kindly agreed to give us some limited edition prints for Silver Pride, which we are selling off, like the family silver. You can get more details of that on silverprideuk.com. Better get that right. That's silverprideuk.com. So David,
yes,
a lot of people, I think artists are a bit like magicians or witches, or like it's a sort of mysterious process to me, and I'm a writer. How did you realize actually I want to become an artist?
I think it's something that's been in me all my life, because my mother told me, bless her heart, I was born in India, and she said that I was always with her on the veranda, and I was always drawing. I had a slate from about 1.5, 2 years old. I had a little slate with me, and a box of chalks, coloured chalks, and I was always drawing.
Do you think that creativity within you was connected somehow to your sexuality? Do you think there's a sort of relationship between those two things? It's a very hard question to answer.
It could well have been, because as I didn't discover it, I realized it, I affirmed it later on, which I can tell you about later on. It was very specific and very profound. Now I look back, I reflect, and this has been with me a long time. My sexuality and my creativity are truly part of me, and I'm proud of it all. You know, it's all one. It's all about my being, who I am. I see them not disconnected. I didn't find something and tag it to myself. I realize it's always been part of me. But I discovered my sexuality, which, as again, was always with me. But as I matured, I saw the wood for the trees, as it were.
Yeah.
And it became a reality and part of me. Okay. Does that make sense?
Oh no, totally. It totally does. And I think a lot of people will find a resonance in that for sure. So as your sort of creativity developed and your artistry developed, other people must have spotted a talent in you to propel you that way too. So tell me about how you go from drawing on a slate when you're a child to sort of art school. How do you get to there? What's that story?
It's a little bit of my life. I was born in India. My father, he worked for the East Indian Railway, and my grandfather had been works manager of the East Indian Railway before him. I was 7 when we returned to England, and I continued my education in a state school, and a group of teachers there in the junior school really encouraged my art from being a 7-year-old to an 11-year-old. I was always drawing and painting, and there was a system then that at the time that one took one's scholarship, the 11 plus, the art colleges in various cities, major cities, had an art school, and 11-year-olds who had passed their 11 plus and showed ability sat an examination and were admitted. They used to take about 10 a year.
Mm-hmm.
And David Hockney attended Bradford School of Art in this way.
Okay.
At 11, he was given a place. And my nearest city, my parents lived on the outskirts of Sheffield and North Derbyshire. I was awarded a place to Sheffield School of Art, which is part of Sheffield Art College. And bless their hearts, my parents were lovely people. But as I know this happened to so many people, talented people, you know, reality was in their minds and they could see no future, no real job, as it were, eventually working out in the area of art. Mm-hmm. So they withdrew my place. So that opportunity fell by me, it disappeared. It's only later on I realized what an opportunity I lost. Yeah. But also life has taught me none of us should have any regrets, because all our experiences bring us to the point where we are now.
Sure. But you're a little boy in Sheffield.
Yeah.
That wants to paint and draw and all of that. You have your kind of art scholarship, I suppose, withdrawn.
Yes.
What happens after that? How do you then?
Well, they were we were poor, as I say. Mm-hmm. My mother did all kinds, and my father had a breakdown. He was out of work for 20 years. Mm-hmm. My mother did all sorts of things. She baked for people. She took in washing. Mm-hmm. Bless her heart.
You left school at 16?
Yeah, 16, yes. Yeah. And no preparation for any career. Yeah. And so when I left school, I just put all my my work together. Incidentally, the O-level Board of Education was the Joint Matriculation Board. And evidently that year, I gained the top marks for art.
Oh, clever man.
And I was given a prize.
Oh.
So I had all my paintings and my drawings from being 11-ish, I should think, to 16, just put them in a portfolio. Portfolio sounds very grand. 2 pieces of hardboard tied together with string. And when I think about it, well, it's fascinating. I just trod the streets of Sheffield. By the end of the day,
hooray, okay.
In one day, I got a job.
Oh my goodness! Job. Okay. I can hardly wait. Go on.
Yes. And they were a display and advertising agency. Right. They produced you name it. They produced everything: posters, show cards for shops, display units, all sorts of things. Mm. Anyway, by the end of the day, I had been given the title of junior artist. Oh. My word. And it was my job to arrive first thing in the morning before these very talented commercial artists arrived, make sure their workstations were clean and tidy, all their brushes were laid out clean, the fresh flower pots, fresh water pots, etc. All ready for them to start work, and to have the kettle on, ready to make a cup of tea. So, and I did that, and I used to go and deliver artworks to clients, and go to printers and bring back type and all sides. Yeah. So I really learned the trade, as it were.
So it was an apprenticeship, I guess.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
It was.
Okay.
And the great day dawned. I mean, they'd have big posters, sale, bargains or something like that. And they just do it freehand, like an outline of the letter, S, a big S, and
Yeah.
A-L-E. And then the great day dawned. I was allowed to fill in
Oh.
between the outside edges. Someone from an agency in London, long complicated story, but they saw my work. They needed a studio manager. And so I went up to London in 1960.
Swinging 60s in London.
I know. It was swinging. And one didn't know it was swinging.
Didn't you swinging at the time?
One was just working and living. You know, you just get on with what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I ran a studio.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, when I was in Sheffield, I used
to... hang on, no, let's stay in London.
All right. Well, I'll tell you very quickly.
All right, go on.
I used to attend evening classes at Sheffield Art School, Art College, to keep my drawing and my painting going. That was all in my own time, in the evenings. When I was in London, I attended the Sir John Cass School of Art for evening classes, just to keep everything fluid, because the work I was producing during the day was commercial art. Yeah. Illustration, making type markups, and seeing printers and all sorts of things like that. Marvelous grounding, etc.
Yeah. So when, like, in terms of the work that you became famous for, Strawberries and that sort of screen printing thing, there must have been some inspiration in the commercial stuff that sort of fed into that. Would you say?
You're right. That's very observant, Gareth. Yes, I'd seen beautiful fashion illustrations and reproductions of fruit, similar, things like that. It all fascinated me. It was like a jewel box of new discoveries. And then in '65, I left my work. I left my job, and I'd applied to various art colleges in the country. Because surprisingly enough, I was fed up with London.
What? Surely not.
You understand.
Couldn't possibly from it. Carry on.
Yeah. And I wanted to get out.
Yeah.
And as it worked out, I now live in North Yorkshire. I didn't know this this part of Yorkshire at all. But York gave me a place.
Okay.
And it turned out to be the ideal place. In '65, when I was still at York, was the first time I began to draw fruit seriously.
Right. So let's talk about fruit. Yes.
Because it had been such a marvelous time for me. When I think back now, I suppose I had the courage to leave a full-time secure job, I had a bed sit in London. I was getting established, as it were, and I left it all to become an art student. And I was so, full of life and vigor, I suppose, and very thankful for the opportunity that was being opened up for me. And I was still, at that time, attending church. As I say, I came from a very staunch religious background. And I just accepted it. That was the only world I knew. And so I looked at everything having a spiritual cause and effect, as it were. And I don't now. Spiritual in a different way now. Nothing to do with religion. But and so I looked at fruit and I saw their significance.
And what was the significance to you?
The fruit of any species carries the seed that perpetuates its own kind. So I made a drawing of an apple, an orange, a pear, grapes, lots of different fruit. But I drew specifically a strawberry. I made quite a few strawberry drawings of strawberries. And to me, they were so significant because of all fruit, it bears its seed on its outside.
Yeah.
It's not contained in a core. And then I saw it as a part of its spiritual identity.
Mm-hmm.
It's very pure. It exposes itself with its seeds on its skin.
So it's quite vulnerable, I suppose. There's a
Quite
vulnerability.
vulnerable, absolutely. And that attracted me to it very, very much. I saw it was very pure. I made research. And, and I just I discovered and realized, Shakespeare had given Desdemona a handkerchief with strawberries embroidered around it, a sign of her purity, her innocence. Medieval stonemasons carved strawberries at the top of pillars and around altars, signifying, resonating with their purity and linking with ancient times. In Roman times, the strawberry was linked with Venus, the goddess of love.
Yeah.
And significantly, it's near heart shape. So all these things fascinated me.
With that, it's interesting you mentioned the heart. How did your romantic life, or your sort of awareness of your sort of gayness, run with, because you're talking about the heart, how was your heart at this point? Was there an awakening there?
Confused.
Confused.
Yes.
And you were still going to church at this point?
Still going to church, yes. It wasn't until 1974, through a cathartic happening, that everything changed, which I'll tell you about. Imagine it's happened to so many other men, especially gay men, born in 1940. It was only 67 we became legitimate. And even then, it wasn't magic overnight, nothing of the sort. And I had girlfriends, they were just lovely platonic relationships. And I remember at a party with one in particular who I was very fond of, and she was fond of me. We found ourselves sitting on a sofa in deep conversation. And she became a famous opera singer. And I think under normal conditions, under certain conditions, we would have married, I suppose, because I love Italian opera. And people who know me very well know my great admiration for Maria Callas. And I have every one of her recordings and all the available live recordings of her. That's another story. And I remember saying to this friend, if ever you needed the best friend in the world, someone you could rely on, you could turn to, I'm here. And I'll always be here for you. And my relationship, I can't explain it. It will always remain platonic. I don't know, I can't explain anymore. I learned later through a mutual friend, she put two and two together. Being in the theatre, she knew that I must be gay.
Yeah, so before you did, in a way.
But I didn't, you see. Totally ignorant of it. Anyway, yes, I went through college. I went through, yes, I was at the Royal College. I graduated in 1970. They gave me a travel scholarship to North America. The irony of it was, when I was in New York in 1969, I was becoming inquisitive.
Mm-hmm.
And my being inquisitive, I found Christopher Street.
Oh, yeah.
And I found the bookshops in Christopher Street, which fascinated me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very humid. Friends of mine had loaned me their apartment. They were away for the summer, and I was staying in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
So it was so warm at night. I used to go and walk. When I think about it, I never thought anything about it. I just went for a walk.
Oh, yeah.
And I gravitated back to Christopher.
Leave it for the judge, David.
I'm guilty. It's true.
It's a fair cop, Your Honour.
Yeah.
So you're in like late 60s, Christopher Street.
Yes.
Did anything happen there?
Yes.
Okay, right.
I was at the top of Christopher Street. I don't remember oh yes, I do remember the bookshop. I'm having a senior moment at the moment.
Don't worry. The bookshop. Yeah, the bookshop's not the important detail of this story, by the way.
Yeah. And I heard this commotion.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and I knew about Stonewall
mm-hmm.
because I'd picked up copies of Gay News,
mm-hmm.
which was a newspaper then.
Yeah.
And I knew about Stonewall, this club,
mm-hmm.
come coffee bar sort of place.
Yeah.
And which is the bottom of Christopher Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I passed it in the daytime and
mm-hmm.
thought, Stonewall. But I was at the top of Christopher Street this night. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning, actually.
And the city that never sleeps.
I know, peering through the window,
uh-huh.
and there was a commotion.
Yeah.
And I looked down. I saw police were there. A real commotion. And I didn't know what was going on. And something inside me told me, this is perhaps the time you should make your hasty retreat, David. And I did.
Oh, you did?
Yes.
Did? Okay.
I didn't mind. I am inquisitive, but it didn't go any further that early morning.
All right, okay.
But it was next day I found out that what was named the Stonewall riots had taken place.
Ah. So you're in New York for that.
I had been a witness to it. I wasn't on top of it. I was up the street.
Yeah.
But I went back that morning.
Uh-huh.
And it's very interesting. This feeling has remained with me. There were crowds of people there, the people speaking. I remember I made out in my limited knowledge of the gay world
mm-hmm.
that the speaker, a woman, must be a transsexual. And I was at the back. I was the opposite side of the road. There's all these people milling around. And I looked around and they were looking at me, one or two. And it was fascinating. I felt a link in my heart. And I thought, yes, I'm one of you. Thank you. Absolutely. These are my people. But I can't join you yet. That feeling is still with me. I can't join you yet. I'm ignorant, but I have a feeling. You are my people. Yeah. And then had to bottle up those emotions. And because next day I was leaving New York. I'd been given a travel scholarship by the Royal College of Art, and I was off across to the West Coast. And but that was fascinating. I was there at the beginning, as it were, of gay pride, and I didn't know it. It's interesting. Anyway, my career continued, and I left the college in 1960 with a plural degree.
1970.
70, pardon me. Thank you.
No, I'm just keeping the timeline straight.
Thank you. Yeah. Both my parents are dead now,
mm-hmm.
but I was my parents' only child, and they were aging.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what am I doing here in the big city? Things are happening. Signs were, a couple of galleries were sort of after me, as it were. As I say, I don't know where I would have been now if I'd stayed, but I thought, I can't stay in London. I've got to go back to Yorkshire to be near them. I can get a teaching job, a lecturer's job in an art college, keep, money coming in to pay the rent, as it were.
Yeah.
And what happened, yes, I lived in Barnsley. I had a flat in Barnsley. My parents lived the other side of Sheffield, down the motorway, and most of my teaching was north on the motorway. I taught at Batley. I taught at Huddersfield when it was a polytechnic, now it's a university. And I taught at York.
Did you find teaching satisfying?
Yes, I did. I love the contact with the young people.
Yeah.
And this satisfied my social conscience because I was continuing as a designer and a painter. So that
was taken care of.
Yes, my day-to-day experience, I wasn't a full-time, just only teaching. I was still continuing my career, fed into my work in the art colleges. So yes, that satisfied me. And that was going on swimmingly. I finished all my, the series of strawberry paintings. There were 30 in total in the end. And I also brought out a suite of 5 strawberry screen prints.
Right.
Now, here we come to the Biennale. In 1972, it doesn't sound as grand, but it's maybe equally as prestigious in its own way. There used to be the British International Print Biennale, which was held at the Cartwright Hall in Bradford. Established artists from all over the world were invited, and there was also a competitive section.
Right.
Unfortunately, that year, 72, one of the prints from the suite was accepted for exhibition. And I was thrilled. On opening night, walked into the exhibition, and there was my strawberry. And what should it be, hanging side by side with Andy Warhol, one of Andy Warhol's flower screen prints.
And how did that make you feel? That
bowled me over. Yeah, I have the catalogue still, and I was a nobody. His was marked NFS, not for sale. There was Frank Stella's there and all kinds. They were sale for £250, something like that. That was a lot of money in 1972. Mine was for sale for £10. So
and did it sell? Did somebody buy it?
The Oxford Gallery took it because it went on. It was one of the prints. Well, I presume because it didn't return to me.
Yeah, it's still in Bradford in that hall, probably.
No, it was at the Oxford Gallery. It went on a national tour.
Oh, amazing.
A section from the large exhibition, and my strawberries were chosen. Went to the Whitechapel and other places around the country. And it was marvelous. I thought, oh, marvelous. I'm off again, as it were. So not being in London hadn't held me back. Then in 74, something happened. I just finished my strawberry paintings. I was out one night in Dewsbury. I happened to go out with my students. It was end of term. They they'd done very well and they wanted me to join them. They were going to a discotheque. I said, oh no, it's your evening of celebration. No, David, come with us. So I did. And during the evening, one of my students was being roughed up, a girl was being roughed up by a gang of youths. And without thinking, I went to try and sort things out. And they turned on me and they beat me up. I was unconscious, suspected fractured skull, taken to hospital. And that was quite a turning point because it shocked me so much. I recovered.
Yes.
I survived. I'm here.
I hope so. I don't have a Ouija board, so this would be weird.
But as has happened to so many of us, through an extremity, some good comes out of it. We've all had our experiences in life.
Yeah.
This was a momentous moment. I was badly injured. That's when I began to grow my beard, because I'm badly scarred under my beard.
Okay.
And what do I do? I've got to sort. I knew I was gay. No one else knew. I thought, you've got to sort it out once and for all. I'd left the church. And sorting it out was sorting the falsehood of belief around it. You know, get rid of, it is this great sin. And if it is, well, I've got to get rid of it. Or it's just normal and natural. What's the big deal? You know? But I had no one to turn to. I turned to the church. I was made to feel dirty, I'm afraid. They just didn't understand. I thought, no, this isn't me who they're talking about. And to cut a long story short, the thought came to me, think back, David, think back. And I did. I spent hours in my flat on my own, thinking back. And I remember I had a pal when I was at school. I would be only 4 at school, at their little prep school, which was run by the East Indian Railway. They ran everything on British lines. They had a prep school in the European village where we lived, and they had a public school in the hills where I was due to go to later on, but we'd left India by that time. And this friend and I, we used to play with our cars in the sand and the dirt along imaginary roads. And I realized, and I remember all these years later, he wasn't just a pal, I loved him. In my heart, I really loved him deeply. It was never expressed in any way, but I knew what I felt. And I came forward in time. And these experiences returned with other friends, with contemporaries of mine who I met along, other men who I met along the way, either through my work or was a student through the 20s. I was 35 by this time, in the early 30s. And I realized some of these people I met, some of these men I met, they never knew it. I love them, really. And that told me in a simple way, you were born, I translated it, expressed it to myself. You were born this way, David. What's the big deal? There was no choice. You are who you are. It's not second best. It's not the alternative. It's just part of life. You have heterosexuals, you have homosexuals, or now, which is more commonly known, gay people. It was less commonly used then. And that's the decision, the realization I came to.
And that was easy for you to accept that at that
It
point.
was. It was. I've always endeavored to be honest
Yeah.
This is why I could never take a relationship with a girl any further in the 60s,
Yeah.
because something innately inside me stopped me, because I thought it would be unfair. It would be unprincipled of me. There'd come a time, maybe I'd be leading a double life, or it would all have to come out in the open, and I'd break the girl's heart.
Yeah.
I could never do that. It's interesting, isn't it?
It is. It is. It's I'm also interested in how that process of acceptance and coming out effectively to yourself,
yes,
affected your art. Could you see a change in your art because you had made that peace in yourself, or were the two things not connected? Is there any?
It
like
was
those blue periods that it sort of goes.
Yes. No, it was connected, but I saw the world, and I saw what I was doing in my expression of art in a different way, because the real me had been realized, and I didn't have to look any further. I'd come to that realization, and it was natural. And I just felt things would be more straightforward. Life may not be easier,
Sure.
but for me, it would be more straightforward. I knew who I was, I'd accepted it.
Yeah.
And so on we go. What I did say to myself, there's one person I really had to be honest with. I wasn't leading a double life or anything like that. And it was my mother. So I rang her up. I said, "Can I see you, Mum?" "Yes." "Are you all right?" "Yes, I'm fine." She thought I was unwell. I said, "No, I'm fine. Just need to see you." And I went, we had a lovely day together. And she always used to admire people like Ivor Novello. And someone who was different, but she admired him. People like Noel Coward, and and so as a little preparation, I'd say, you love Ivor Novello and his music. "Oh yes." I can see her now. I said, "Well, did you know he was homosexual?" "Oh." And I said, "Well, I am as well, Mum." And she just accepted it. This highly religious woman. And you know what she did? She just got up, and I stood up as well. And she just came over to me. She wrapped me in her arms. And she said, "I love you. You're my David." She said, "I don't understand," but she says, "I love you." And that was beautiful. And I said, "Shall I tell Dad?" She said, "No, I'll tell your father." And my father just accepted me just as I was. But that to come from my mother, it was beautiful.
So let's talk about love.
Yes.
And that means talking about Nick.
That's nice. Yes.
So tell me about Nick.
Shall I tell you when we met?
Yes.
That very first evening?
Yes.
I had
placed adverts in the gay news, and you hadn't met anybody.
No.
After that?
Yes, I applied. I followed his his advertisement up, and I didn't know the procedure. I've learned since that one should meet on neutral territory, perhaps in a cafe or something like that. So what did I do? I invited him to my flat to dinner.
Absolutely.
And he must have thought, who am I going to visit? We had corresponded a little. Yeah. And because, Barnsley isn't Chelsea. It has its own charm, but it's a mining town. And he must have thought, well, he did say, well, he had half a thought. I wonder who this person is. Anyway, he arrived, we had our dinner, we talked non-stop, and we clicked. It was actually love at first sight. And had a lovely evening. And in fact, it may be noteworthy, he didn't leave that night. And
were you nervous about that side of things, or?
Yes, yes, to be honest, yes. I was, I was totally inexperienced and green as they come. And we afterwards, we met sort of every weekend. And then finally, after about 6 months, Nick said, look, this is ridiculous. I was living in a rented flat. And he had his own house. He said, why don't you come and live with me? And I was overwhelmed by that. I said, do you mean it? Oh, yes. He said, we love each other. He was a great leg puller. He said, there's obviously a little bit of attraction. But he said, look, seriously, why don't we live together? I have a house, and why don't you come and share it with me? And that's what happened. That was, by that time, it was the early part of 1976.
You said you couldn't work. How did being in a relationship, being in love, affect the way you related to art and your own creativity? And some people can't write if they're in love. I wouldn't know, but because I can't write, no. Was there a change in how you related to art or your own kind of talent when you're in love? Can you be an artist and happy, I suppose is what I'm asking.
Yes, I think so. Yes. This was the mid-70s, and what was in vogue then was enamel chocolate brown.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
So I painted all the walls, top to bottom of the house, in a shiny chocolate brown.
Wow, that must have been like living inside a chocolate ganache or something, was it?
Well, oh yes, you'd love it, wouldn't you?
I'd like it.
Gareth. But unfortunately, I had so many paintings, I covered the walls with the paintings, but they were those dark colours, the dark coloured walls, were a marvellous foil for the bright paintings. And I also replanned and remade the garden. So I was being creative. And then suddenly, one day in 79, it was very interesting. I remember it well. I just had the urge. And I said, I'm going to paint today. And that was the starting point. And it was as though someone had pressed a button and I was off.
Did you feel as if you were a conduit for creativity, or was the creativity coming from you? There's this idea that creativity is shared, and the old-fashioned idea of genius was that something visited you rather than you were a genius.
That's very observant. I've always felt I've been a conduit, and I did very much there. I didn't feel, and I never feel, I originate the ideas. The ideas exist. They exist. They come from somewhere.
I'd like to fast forward you a bit to not a pleasant thought, but how long were you and Nick together?
42 years. Yes.
And so passing away when he did must have been devastating.
It was.
How did
Yeah.
that affect your art? How did that affect your creativity?
He died. I can't, doesn't time pass so quickly? And I feel it's passing so quickly at the moment. I can't believe it will be 4 years on August the 16th, which is only just over a month away.
Yeah.
In 2017. It affected me. It devastated me.
I don't want to upset you by talking about this, by the way.
No. I get it. Yeah. That's very kind of you. I have. It's not a cliche. It's not corny. It is It is in fact a journey. I'm still on this journey, and I think forever will be. I was so devastated. To be frank, I no longer had any reason to live. Mm-hmm. We were still in love. Mm-hmm. We were soulmates. In 2019, I suddenly got the urge. Mm-hmm. What had happened to begin work again? What had happened prior to this moment? Just before Nick died, I would settle him down on this sofa where I am sitting now, mm-hmm. and I would come and join him on another sofa, which is here by the mm-hmm. side of this sofa. And he'd be reading or just sitting quietly. Mm. Or I put a record on, the CD, and we'd have some soft music. And, or it could be Maria Callas.
Yeah. Yeah.
My relationship with Maria Callas is infamous, I'm told. And he said, can I bring my notebook? He said, are you going to draw? I said, yes, I have so many ideas. And that pleased him. Mm-hmm. And I began to draw, just making visual notes. And I'd filled 2 notebooks full of ideas. Mm-hmm. And so the raw material to begin again was there. Yeah. And there was a nice link with Nick. Mm-hmm. Because I'd been in his presence.
When you had done it?
When I'd made these notes, yes. And it was in the early spring or late winter.
It's hard to tell in Yorkshire.
Sorry? Hard to tell, yes. Moot point. Well, that's early 2019. I had the urge, and I began drawing in the studio. Mm-hmm. Not huge drawings, but 50 centimeters or 65 centimeters square. Mm-hmm. And as regards my output, that has continued. Mm-hmm. I thought I would have begun painting by now, but I haven't. I've just drawn. And to date, last year, because of COVID and the first lockdown, was less productive than I had thought it would be. Yeah. But I've produced nearly 100 drawings since the beginning of, since the spring of 2019. And that seems to be continuing.
Yeah. So just to kind of wind up, you must look back at your life's work,
yes,
which isn't finished yet.
No.
And do you think, I'm a good artist, or I've done all, like the creativity that you have been a conduit for and brought into the world and kind of put on pictures and made as sculptures, you must be incredibly proud of that.
I don't look at it like that. I look at my work. I've got everything recorded in photographs, and some of it is on my website,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm on Instagram as well. This is my friend Craig Burton said, "You've got to go on Instagram." So he put me on Instagram.
He's full of bright ideas, isn't he?
He's full of bright ideas, bless him.
Jack in the box.
I look at some of the work and I think, crikey, did I do that?
Mm.
I don't believe it.
Mm.
Again, it's not corny, but for me, everything I've produced, I'm not a father, but these pieces are my children. It may sound corny and very amusing to some people, but that's how I view them. But they're out in the world now, and I feel no possession. I freed myself from that many, many, many years ago. So they're out in the world. Some I have kept. I've kept one piece from every exhibition, or I would have no work from my past here because all my shows have sold. So I've kept at least one. Yes, one from every show. My favorite of the whole of any show, and but I feel no possession of them, and therefore, they can be free. They can go out into the world, and my hope has always been that my purpose here is hopefully to create pieces. Sometimes could be classified as beautiful, sometimes profound, hopefully. Maybe stop someone in their tracks and they see something in a new way.
You've experienced a lot in your life. Do you consider yourself a brave person, a courageous person? Because obviously the theme of this year's Silver Pride is everyday heroes.
Yes.
And you seem pretty damn heroic to me.
Oh, bless your heart. I think that's for others. That's for others to label me. All I say of myself is that I'm a survivor. I'm a survivor. I just touched on very briefly, I had a breakdown. Again, 5 years of no work from 1990 to 95. That was through sheer overwork. And because I was teaching, I was taken advantage of, by the system. It didn't only happen to me, it happened to others who are no longer here. It was so serious. And but I survived that. I've survived a heart attack, which happened just over a year ago, and other things.
So you survived life.
Yes,
you're surviving life.
Yes. Macular degeneration, which was a threat that I would go blind. I'm getting through that. I'm being very well cared for at York Hospital. They know I'm an artist. They're doing all they can to save my sight. It sounds very dramatic, but that is the case. And so there have been these incidents throughout my life where, something or other has just tried to either pull me down or finish me off. And I won't have any of it. I have so much more to do. I'm so grateful. I really am, more than words can say now. I have a lust for life now again.
Great. Well, that's even perfect.
Coin a phrase.
Yeah, no, and it's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
David, thank you so much for telling us about your life and your art. It's been a pleasure. This has been David Platts, Art History. This session is from Silver Pride 2021. If you enjoyed it, there are more to come. You might like to go to our website, www.silverprideuk.com. That's right, isn't it, David?
It is.
Yes, where you can donate. There's a big fat donate button, and all money raised by Silver Pride will be going to support grassroots groups, which support people like David and like me soon, and across the country. So do that, please. And without further ado, I shall say goodbye. I'm Gareth McLean. Thanks.